What's going on? Welcome into another week of Horseplayers Happy Hour, and the tour that we kicked off a few weeks ago. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. The usual host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, he is en route. He'll be at his hotel soon enough, so he'll be joining us in a few minutes. We got a little bit of a delay, but we are joined by some special guests. Many of you are familiar with these folks. I'm very familiar with these guys. Going all the way back to Horse Player days. These are, I guess we can call you guys 2/3 of Team Rotundo if we're including Lee Davis as the team, but these are let's call you guys the folks who actually started Team Rotundo, the namesakes,
Sure.
Peter Rotundo Jr. and Peter Rotundo Sr., new dad and new granddad of Rose. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Great. Everything's good. We're up at the spa. Dad came for his first visit to see baby Rosie before the Run for the Roses. So we're good. We're hanging in there. We'll be here this weekend, keeping it low key, and then I think life's going to restart for everybody in a couple of weeks for us anyway.
Well, before we get deeply involved in going through all the action for this weekend, if you're trying to get involved in this week's contest, we've only got a couple of minutes left. Producer Craig just threw that up there on the screen. First race is race number 5 at Belmont Park. Post time is 3:04. A little bit of a lighter week as far as entries. So this is a good opportunity for any of you who are either new to the contest, the regular season itself, or if you're someone who's been around for the first few weeks, you might actually have an opportunity to get in and have, let's just look at it from a probability standpoint. The fewer entries there are, the better chance you have of obtaining some points or outright qualifying for the postseason. And that's what we're here to do with these happy hours week in and week out. The top 2 finishers each week will automatically qualify for the playoffs that we have at the end of the year. The top 10 qualifiers, or top 10 finishers, I should say, will earn points toward the overall point standings. Whoever has the most points at the end of the regular season earns a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. Whoever wins the postseason also gets a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. This is a $20 entry here this week. There is no Saturday feeder that we are playing into. That's going to be going toward next week's Saturday BCBC qualifier. But also always want to make note that these contests and these happy hours benefit TAA and TRF. So you're doing a positive thing, not just by joining us and having some fun, but we are helping the horses. And again, as I've said a million times, without the horses, we have no horse racing. So as far as the usual rundown is concerned, we'll go through these races more often than not. But this week, I think everybody is looking toward Friday and Saturday, gentlemen. And let's start off. Let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about the Kentucky Derby, because I'm sure everyone wants to hear who Team Rotundo likes in the race. The morning line favorite, Essential Quality. He's really done nothing wrong. He's a perfect 5 for 5 lifetime. I guess the knock that I've at least brought up is that it doesn't seem like he has any real edge as far as speed figures are concerned on the rest of the field. Let's start with Peter Sr. I know the Belmont is typically your bread and butter, but you've had some success with the Kentucky Derby as well. How do you see this race?
Well, I tell you, I like Rock Your World. I think the horse is bred on top and bottom to handle the distance. You know, like a Saya Candy Ride. Rock Your World won on turf and dirt, and so did Candy Ride. So I'm looking forward to a big race. If the key is, and I don't want to sound like I'm hedging, but could he handle the main track at Churchill Downs? We don't know.
Now, that actually kind of leads to another question I have about this horse. Let's just talk about it from a pace standpoint. Where, as someone who likes the horse, where are you hopeful he's positioned? Do you want Rosario to go right to the front, or do you think he sits just off?
It depends on the break. Maybe it's a bit, you know what I mean? It's a cop-out answer, but it depends on the break. If he breaks well, go right to the top. Because Rosario on the lead is as good as he is when he's coming off the pace, going down the crown of the track. He's very aggressive when he's got a speed horse.
I agree. I remember when he first came to New York, it felt like that summer at Saratoga on grass, he won so many races outright on the lead. He just went to the front, walked the dog, and had plenty left in the tank. And we saw what Rock Your World was capable of when he was able to control things in the Santa Anita Derby in his first start on dirt. Peter Jr., where are you looking in this race? Do you like the favorite, or are you trying to get a little bit creative?
Well, you know, Matt, I mean, at the end of the day, right, we know so many people in this game now, right? And we have so many alliances and allegiances and and people we root for, right? So first off, let's just go through that, right? So look at my hat. You know, this is from Stephen Panis, you know, who's raising money for awareness for his late son's charity with the South Carolina Gamecocks and Hot Rod Charlie, right? You've seen this logo all over Churchill Downs. And listen, I can tell you I'm rooting for him 100%. So I'd love to see him in the winner's circle. What a story between, and I just read Jay Privman's article with Doug O'Neill and that whole story. It's just, and the young kids from boat racing. So as far as the storyline goes, Hot Rod Charlie's number one. Of course, Daisy Phipps, longtime friend. She had to work with me many years ago as part of her penance in life. To think that the Phipps and Daisy's running partners with Vinny Viola and Mike Rapoli on a horse in the Kentucky Derby. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. All the Italians have taken over, right? So I'm rooting for her too, obviously. But at the end of the day, I got a handicap, right? I mean, listen, 2019 was the best Derby of my life. Last year, not 100%, although, you know, I have this weird record going with my first or last. The horses I think that I run first or last, the last 4 years have run first or last. So 3 winners, by the way, which is insane. So we're back to the first Saturday in May. So I feel like last year I got a pass, and now we're back to going. I know it's going to be a bit of a shock when you hear it, but because his name is so bad, right? I mean, what a terrible name for a horse. And the idea that horses with bad names can't win the Derby. Let's not get silly. He doesn't know his name. He doesn't know that his owners ran Campbell's Soup and the fortune that is. So Soup and Sandwich, I like in the Kentucky Derby this time. If you look at him last time, I was at church. I was at Florida. I was at Gulfstream. Horse came into the paddock studdish, as they say. Definitely did not have his mind on his business. Watched the race, went 5 wider on that first turn. There was speed inside. There was speed outside. Before you know, he got to the lead. And Johnny V, I love him, of course, but he's on the lead. And all of a sudden, Known Agenda was on him. He hadn't moved yet. He was still holding him. By the time he went by, he then started to ride. He made a little bit of a kickback, and he was on the wrong lead. It was his 3rd race of his life. My thought is Mark Cassie has a month, 5 weeks to get him ready. This horse has got talent. I mean, we haven't seen it yet. He takes another step forward. He has the 19 post. The 20 is going to be Bourbonic, who's dropping back to last. He'll be able to look at all the horses on the inside. And if they go, he can pull back. If they don't go, this horse gets into a rhythm and a stride and just decides to live up to his tap it and is into mischief. This could be a show of all shows with that gray streak around the track. So anyway, Soup or Sandwich, Known Agenda. I like the Florida Derby. I think he can come back and run big. And I got a couple others in there, but listen, I think that you could throw out half the field, and if you can make a case for the other half. But that's where I'm going.
Well, I'd like to say one more thing. I like for a long shot King Fury, 16, and part of Team Rotundo, the other third. I know for a fact because I spoke to him and I made him third. Also, keep in mind the fences, Lee Davis. So he likes keep in mind to come off the pace, and he likes the idea to blinkers off. And if you look at that workout, 46 and change. I mean, he was good as a 2-year-old, and sometimes they don't come back as a 3-year-old, and he's had a couple of dull races. But with those blinkers on and that work, who knows? He may light up the board. He could be another Mind That Bird on a fast track, though. We
just saw technical analysis for Chad Brown and Klarovich Stables win the first leg of this week's Horseplayers Happy Hour. And perhaps we'll see more big things coming from that outfit this weekend in a number of races, the Kentucky Oaks, the Turf Classic on the undercard, and then obviously the Kentucky Derby with Highly Motivated. He's a fascinating horse to me because I'm in one camp where I don't want any part of him this weekend, and it has nothing to do with his talent. It has to do with the fact that I'm just not convinced this is what he wants to do and what he'll flourish at going forward. Where do you fellas land with a horse like Highly Motivated, who, if you want to look at him and you're a believer, I mean, if you like a horse like Essential Quality at 2-1 or 5-2, how can you not like Highly Motivated at 10 or 12-1?
Originally, honestly, when I first went through it in my ABCs, he was on the A side. And then I kept looking, and then I looked at the breeding a little more, and then I said, he probably doesn't want to go this far. But he also doesn't want to be on the lead. I mean, last time, you know how slow that pace was. There was no speed in the Bluegrass. I mean, he just found himself on there. So he's going to want to sit and ultimately make that move. But can he get 1.25 miles? He's just, and as far as breeding goes, we really got to look into it. That's the Derby. You got to look at the breeding. He's just not there.
Well,
Peter Senior, your thoughts?
Well, your wife, Shona, my daughter-in-law, has told me ad nauseum, if you want to win, you have to bet Chad Brown. So I know who she's picking.
It's true.
Now, actually, you and Pete, you brought up the breeding aspect of it from the Kentucky Derby, where obviously 1.25 miles. This would be the first time any of these horses have gone this far. There's Shona.
Just to clarify
Yes.
about the Chad Brown comment. I
Uh-oh.
just said if you're going to put together a multi-race bet, like you could have a favorite, and then like a long shot that comes in at 45-1, and you'd hate to lose that because you left out Chad Brown. I'm just saying, these guys try to beat the chalk all the time. They tell me that I'm chalky, but if you're a winner, if you want to win, sometimes you gotta bite the bullet.
Yeah.
Or if you listen to Bob Baffert, apparently what he told Chad Brown, the only way he can win is you got to go to the main track, sprinkle some grass seed, and hope that grass grows up.
That's a good one.
Which I thought was a very funny comment. Again, the contest is underway. The first race, waiting for that to go official at Belmont Park. Peter Senior, as someone who has had as much success with a race like the Belmont Stakes as you have, how important is the breeding aspect of it, or is it simply put you just look for the best horse?
Well, I consider the breeding of it and all, but I think the best horse at the end of the day wins the race, and how the pace scenario is. It's very simple. I keep it simple, stupid. There's a lot of speed, and they're setting fast pace. You look for a close, and vice versa.
Yeah, but this Derby, which is usually, I feel like I can identify the pace, like what's going to happen in the first half mile. I don't know. I don't know who's going, and I don't know. I literally have no idea who will be on the lead after that first quarter, and I don't think anybody does.
More and more time goes by. Let me throw this as an option out there, and those of you who are listening and watching, feel free to comment away, and we'll dive into some of these in a little bit. More and more time goes by. I'm more and more convinced that Medina Spirit's actually going to be on the lead, because I don't know that you want to necessarily put yourself into a box or get into a bit of a tight spot trying to take back and get too cute. Keep in mind, this is the outfit John Velasquez and Bob Baffert, who teamed up aboard Authentic last year to win the Derby and the Breeders' Cup Classic, by going right to the front and saying, come and catch me. I wonder if you get a situation like that, almost reversing the scenario of the Santa Anita Derby. And if that's the case, it does become at least a little bit more of an interesting, I don't want to say pace scenario, but I just think there are more decisions that need to be made by some of the riders involved. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, right, back when you've won how many derbies? 6 derbies. It is a free roll for Baffert and Johnny V. They won it last year. So yeah, we'll take a shot, go to the lead, and come and catch me. That makes sense to me. I mean, it makes perfect. I didn't thought of it that way, but I could see him trying to do that. Why not?
As far as the contest this week is concerned, we had 160 entries. That means the top 16 will earn a $179 entry into next Saturday's BCBC qualifier. But again, as we know, with the way the regular season is set up for the Horseplayer Happy Hour Tour, you're playing for points and outright qualifiers to get into the postseason at the end of the year. So the top 16, those will be the names we'll try to keep an eye on. Producer Craig, I don't have the tech that PTF typically does, so I can't just automatically start pulling up some of these comments. If you want to go through and kind of be the moderator and decide if you think that there's anything worth chopping up, we can go through it. But again, all of you, whether you're watching on Twitter or Facebook or on YouTube, feel free to fire away. Ask these gentlemen questions. Obviously, they know what's going on. Oh, and here he is, our trusty leader, the host, Peter Thomas Fornatale.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, and I use that term loosely for covering for me there. Lexington traffic. Let me tell you, New York traffic has nothing on Lexington traffic. We were just sitting for no apparent reason. It made me feel very at home. So great to have you guys here, and I appreciate your sartorial choice there, Pete. Rocking the kitchen shirt.
I have to wear the JK, no doubt.
When it comes down to who wore it better, though, Michelle Yu still has us all beat.
I haven't seen that, but I'm sure she wore it better.
It's pretty great. She actually sewed her own label in. I was pretty impressed. I didn't know. We've heard her call races on the show. I didn't know she had that club in her bag, though. I was pretty impressed. How's Grandpa doing over there? Everything good?
I tell you, it's great. It's the greatest thrill in the world to see my granddaughter for the first time. And she's the only girl/woman that's ever listened to me. I read her a bedtime story, and she was attentive at 2 months old. You know? I mean, I'm so happy.
Oh, that's great. That's great stuff.
Hey, we real quick, we saw Mom, we saw Shones come through in the background. Does she actually like Highly Motivated to win the race on Saturday?
She hasn't looked yet. She's literally, she's kind of busy these days. So.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
I wonder whatever with.
Yeah.
I know. So she hasn't had any. Tomorrow, I think the way the day's mapping out in the morning, she's going to have some time to look it over. But yeah, so I'm not sure where she's going and what direction yet. But yeah, well, listen, bottom line, I think it's going to be a great Derby. I think the Oaks, we agree on the Oaks. Like, I don't remember the last time we agreed on a horse. It's been a while. But we're all in on Pauline's Pearl.
I like
live long shot for sure. You know, that's pretty darn good paper for a 20
I
to
don't
1
think she's
shot.
going to go off at 20 to 1.
I don't either.
On the line.
No.
I don't think so at all.
It's
I made
hard,
her.
it's hard
made
to
her
know.
8.
Oh, you made 8 on your line? And that's your value line. I could see it going either way just because there's so many fillies that have to take money. Travel Column has to take money. Malathot has to take money. Search Results has to take money. And then you could see Wise Guy cases for the horses that have form to those horses also maybe being a couple of ticks lower. You know, Maracuja might be lower than the predicted line simply because of the form to Search Results if she gets super hot and the one, you know, it's very interesting betting race, that's for sure. I'm super psyched. I took a little position on Search Results when there was 8 to 1 available, but it was not like I love Search Results more than the others. I just thought that she should be half of 8 to 1. You know, I can't wait to see the race. It's gonna be super. Where are you guys gonna be watching from?
We're gonna be home in Saratoga. Yes,
Nice.
we'll just be chilling here, and then I'll be back in the city next week. But yeah, we'll be hanging out here with the baby and Shona. Today we actually went to the museum. We saw the new film that they have there.
I've heard it's supposed to be great.
Oh my God, the coolest, unbelievable. You know, they said, "Oh, you got to come visit." And I'm like, okay, whatever. Of course, I'll get there whenever. Then when he came, I was like, "Let's go." So we went. Unbelievable. You have to go. And I'm just thinking, not only for racing fans, but even if you're trying to introduce someone to the game, it's like beyond good, like next level. Really, really, really good.
That's great to hear. I'm a big fan of that place. Always have been. We're off for the 6th race at Gulfstream, our second contest event. I saw we have 160 players. That's not bad at all. You know, amidst the chaos of Derby week and having this pick 6 carryover at Belmont too. I was worried we might get lost in the shuffle, so I'm happy with that number. Matt, did you look at this race? Have you already given, or do you have a one we can root for you?
Yeah, I actually I fed into the Express Bet qualifier today and the cash tournament over on Horse Tourneys. I have the 3, so I would like the race to stop right now.
Well, you're in the right spot. We'll see who's coming from the back, but I still think you're traveling strongly. And
I mean, look, she should win from here.
Yeah, you put the sword, try to put the sword to the field. I love that. I love that way of handling. And yeah, if you lose from here, you lose from here. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, it's
PTF. I not to go away from the action going on right here. I did get to go back and listen to about the last half of the Final Answer show last night, and I thought it was fantastic. Thought you guys did a really good job down there.
Well, thank you. We had a lot of fun, great time with our partners over at Medallion Racing and TaylorMade. It was a live show with about 90 attendees, which was great.
Nice.
Michelle coming in from California just basically to host that event was a great thrill. So it wasn't just me making fun of Kinshin for once. So that was that was very enjoyable. But I think we went through a lot of info, and Philip Shelton from Medallion brings a unique perspective, that of a horseman, to the proceedings. So that was very, very, very fun as well. So thank you for checking that out. Encourage people to listen. And, Derby Questions is the name of the game today. Pete's, I don't know what you're doing, but you hang around. No obligation to stick around, but hang around as long as you want. We're getting some good questions in already. And the first one I see that I think is one of the big questions of the whole Saturday is, what price is Essential Quality going to be in the race? Now, we have this added piece of information about Mattress Mac to offset his promotion, going to be betting between $2 and $4 million on Elusive Quality. it seems like the math suggests that could move the needle. If he was going to be 3, that might make him 2. Current guesses as to what price this horse will be. Matt, why don't we start with you?
I've been pretty firm on this. I think he's going to be 5-2 when it's all said and done. I don't think that represents value. I don't think that's actually indicative of the likelihood of him winning the race. I think he's considerably less than that. I made him 9-2. And a lot of it has to do just simply with the number of horses in the race. You can only have 100% of an outcome. It has to add up to 100, and the likelihood, it can be random things, unforeseen things, but you have to factor that in if you're being honest. I think some folks, when you go through and they price out a race, I think they get a little overzealous with the actual likelihood of things happening, because there's just random stuff that can happen. And I'm not questioning the horse's ability. He's really talented, but I don't think he deserves to be as short as he's going to be. And my final answer to your question would be, I think he's 5-2 when it's all said and done.
And you're factoring in the Mattress Mac money into that?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to go with 2-1, and I think it's the kind of thing where he would have been 5-2, and I think that money is going to be what's makes the difference for him. Pete, what's your best guess? Senior, you've seen a Derby or two. You've seen a Derby or two favorite in your time. Where do you think this one ranks in terms of how they're going to bet it?
Why do you have to date me? I've seen look at my face. Come on. I look like a child. I look like a father, not a grandfather.
Anyway, a child.
Right. Anyway, 5-2. I agree with my man Matt. I believe he'll be 5-2.
Well, it matters if he's going to bet $2 million or $4 million, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a giant difference. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
So,
I think it's all about just covering his promotion and what the price is. The shorter the rest of the world makes him, the more he's going to bet. So it's going to be interesting to see.
I mean,
truth be told, though, to your point, if it's 2 million, I'm still standing firm on that 5-2, but I could certainly see 2-1. If it's 4, I mean, he might back into 8-5. I don't think that's out of if he bets actually that much money.
Right. If the promotion was super successful, I don't know what the specifics are. It's something like you spend $3,000 at the furniture store and you'll get it free if the favorite wins. It's not like he loves Essential Quality. The bet is actually if the favorite wins, what he's going to do. So it becomes a little bit hard to calculate. And then there's also the chance, I guess, he could get cheeky and try to bet in some other pools. But it feels like in the spirit of the promotion, he's probably just going to bet on the nose. It's going to create value elsewhere.
What happens if, so everyone knows this, right? He waits to make his bet. They open, Rock Your World's the favorite.
It can't happen. It can't happen, can it? I mean, undefeated 2-year-old champion. He's got to be the favorite.
I know. I agree. I'm just saying.
I'm looking at some speed figures. Yeah. He has more of an edge on some figures than on other figures. But I'm kind of with Matt in general that the right move is to try to beat him, just because there is a lot of chaos that can go down, and we're dealing with a horse that, despite the obvious credentials, doesn't have that huge speed figure edge. How much did you guys talk? I wasn't watching before I came on. How much Derby have you guys talked so far?
Yeah, we went through our picks and who we like and stuff. But yeah,
gotcha.
I mean, I think we're all on the same page, right? It's like Essential Quality is a very, very nice horse. But, I felt like I felt the same way about Nyquist, and then he won.
Exactly. Right. I think that's a very good analog, Pete, actually, as a horse. I would have told you all the same things I'm saying about Essential Quality. I did say about Nyquist, and we saw what happened there. So it's not like, this is the bet of the year opportunity to beat this horse. It's more like, no, it's a horse race, and I know that the value is in trying to beat this horse, but I'm not like looking to make my whole gambling year or anything trying to beat him. He's legit. I mean, but like I like, I probably wouldn't go quite as high as Matt's 9-2 if I'd made 100% line, but I'd be closer to that than I would be to the price he's going to be. But we'll see. See what happens.
I was mentioning earlier in the last 4 derbies, I put out my $100 betting strategy, right? So we've talked about that too much, but the reality is, on part of it is I say who first or last. I bet there's a horse I like to either win or run last, so I'll only use him on top, and then won't use him anywhere else. In 17 was Always Dreaming. In 18 was Mendelssohn last.
Yep. Last. You got a first and a last.
19 was maximum security. First and last.
First.
Right? And then in 20 was authentic. So this year,
Jeez, you're on quite a run with this bet.
I know. And it's all in writing in advance. But this year, I think it's so obvious. Who do you think? I mean, if you have to pick a horse, who's going to be first and last?
I have a clear pick for me, and it's the horse I ended up picking, and that's Rock Your World. Because I think he's good for the first or last concept because he's either going to get out there and get the great trip I think he's going to get and improve on the dirt one more time and win, or he's going to end up getting dirt kicked in his face and not like it, and somehow it's going to go wrong, and he's not going to fire at all. That's where my brain went right away. Okay. Now, who's the actual answer then?
Mandaloon.
Mandaloon's a great one for that too.
I mean,
he's either going to run back to the race 2 back and he's going to win, or he's going to run the last race again and he's going to run last.
Right. If he improves off his race 2 back, he wins. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm.
He wins. But if what happened last time, who knows? And now he looks like such a beast in the morning. God.
He's trained well. And, Matt, this is a big bandwagon now, and we have the engineer of the bandwagon pulling the horn to go choo-choo in Matt Bernier, who's been talking about this horse much longer than Johnny-come-latelys like me, who got excited about him after the fact. How on the eve of this, it's not really the eve of the Derby, the eve of the Derby, Matt, how are you feeling about the Mandaloon selection?
As we get closer, I get less and less enthusiastic, but it's still the concept and the idea remains. To Rotundo Jr.'s point, to your point, the idea of if he gets back to the Risen Star, he's in with a chance. If he improves off the Risen Star, I could make a case that he's one of the most likely winners of the race, but he could also run the Louisiana Derby again and run 16th, and that I think I had said it when we first started talking about him all those weeks ago. I almost wish we had found out that there was something that went wrong in that race where you had, okay, we can point to it and say, I don't know, X, Y, and Z happened. We're going to draw a line through it. He's better. He's going to be good to go. The fact that there isn't any real reason, or it doesn't seem like there's a discernible reason, it just makes him that much more of a wild card and an unknown in here. I'm going to still maintain sort of my hypothesis that go back and watch that start. Not going to say it was a disaster, but I felt like he had a little bit of a rooster tail and he stumbled a bit. And I guess I've tried to explain it this way. For a human athlete, you don't end up getting hurt, but you play through something, but you can tell it's not actually right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just say, all right, well, you know what? It wasn't my best day, but my hamstring was a little bit tight or whatever it was. It's not affecting you walking. It's not affecting your day to day. You can still go and train and work out, but you're still not really at your best. I wonder if it's something like that. And again, I'm drawing at straws. I'm trying to cook up a reason for why he ran as poorly as he did. But if that's the case, and he's had time to get back to his good old self, and it seems like, again, in the mornings he's trending that direction, why can't it be something like that? Now he's ready to fire. And I'll be very interested to see. The X factor of the race to me is Rock Your World, but arguably the most interesting horse in the race is Mandaloon, because I agree with you. He could easily win, I think anyway, or he could run 15th.
Pete, you had a thought on Mandaloon?
No, I don't. All I could say is this, though. In a 20-horse field, and maybe it's a simplistic statement, you need racing luck and you need a good, a good ride, and you have to get lucky. I think that all these horses are, in the Derby for a reason. They're all good. They're all good, but you still have to get the right ride, and the breaks have to go in your favor at the end of the day.
Here's a horse I think people, there's so many people who come and look at one race a year, and it's the Kentucky Derby. And there's a horse I think they're going to end up gravitating towards, and that's one who hasn't gotten that much attention from a lot of the full-time horse players that I've talked to. But I think if you're just coming at this from the outside and you look down at your program and you see the guy who's won this race 6 times with a horse that's a big price And Eddie, whose quote I'm going to pop up, his comment I'll put up on screen now, makes the comment about him wanting double-digit odds on Baffert. Good post, Johnny V, thinking this horse is going to get a good trip. I've kind of just convinced myself that I'm, at least on top, I'm standing against. But I'm curious to get the rest of the panel's thoughts on Medina Spirit, because it is one of those things where if he were to win after the race, it would be I could just hear the collective groan of horse players saying, "Why didn't I use Baffert at 15-1?"
We had talked about it before you came on a little bit, and I don't know that I love him, but I've kind of convinced myself that he's actually going to be the pace setter in the race, and a lot of it has to do with where he is drawn in relation to Rock Your World, and I wonder if it's just sort of a reverse scenario to the Santa Anita Derby where they were content sitting off Rock Your World, who was drawn toward his inside. He made the front. They said, all right, we'll take our shot. Didn't work out. Obviously, Rock Your World ran away. I think now with this draw, and it's odd coming from me because I really don't care too much about the post draw in general, but I do think there is a circumstance now where we've seen Baffert and Johnny V team up to win the Derby and the Classic last year on Authentic by going to the lead. I don't think now, don't get cute. Just go. If you break alertly, go right to the front. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But speed is this horse's best asset, in my opinion. His two best races have come when he's been outright on the lead. I say go on with it.
I think it's a smart strategy. And I think with Joel aboard Rock Your World, my thought is he's not going to be going hell-bent for leather on Rock Your World to the lead. And if somebody wants to make that mission, I've heard the theory that it might be Soup and Sandwich who goes on a mission like that. I totally get and agree. Medina Spirit, in an effort to reverse form, that's probably his best chance. I don't mind any of that for Rock Your World, but that was probably the biggest disagreement we got into on the panel last night. Was I love that draw for Rock Your World, because my thing about him is I just want him to stay clean and be in position where he can break and go forward. And we see Churchill a lot of times that outside trip is not any kind of problem. It's not a track that it can lean inside, but for me, historically, I wouldn't say it does. We got a very good question about Rock Your World. I'll pop up here from Leland, who's heard many people saying that Rock Your World rode a gold rail on Santa Anita Derby Day. And if we believe that was the case, and if you could upgrade Medina Spirit as a result. For me, people I respect a lot and do a lot more bias work than me had that day as being good for speed and inside. But when I go back and rewatch those races, I felt like it was more a question of circumstance, and that a lot of the best horses got the best trips on the lead, but I didn't necessarily think that the rail was like worth anything. So fully acknowledging that there are people who know a lot more than me who disagree with the statement, I don't think that was the difference. I still think if you want to upgrade Medina Spirit, upgrade him because he's going to use different tactics feels right. But I'm just not 100% sold on this idea of the bias. Any of you guys have a thought on that? Am I right, or is it going to be the rest of the trip handicapping world?
Look, to me, it's as simple as, and this is why it's important to understand how certain racetracks play. Santa Anita, I sound like a broken record. Route races at Santa Anita on the dirt, you have to be on the lead or just off of it to have a legitimate chance of winning. So I'm not going to sit here and say that was some one-off where, oh my goodness, you needed to be inside in speed. Well, by the way, there's a byproduct of speed. Typically, you're on the inside. You go and you clear off, go to the rail. It's the shortest way around the track. So I don't want to sit here. I'm very reluctant to assign biases to racetracks. I don't like to do it unless it's so obvious that you can't help but acknowledge that something's a little bit different. I think it was one of those things where at Santa Anita, it's where you want to be. Maybe it inflated that sort of margin of victory some, but I don't think it was some gross exaggeration of how good the horse ran. He galloped out another half mile in front of the field. Yeah. I think it's one of those things. And Pete, I agree with you with the draw. I think it's a perfect spot for him. He's bred to run 5 miles. Who cares how far out he's going to be? And again, if you want to, and Peter Sr. brought this up as well. This is a horse who, if you break alertly and you want to go, you play the break, nobody to your inside goes, go right to the front. Who cares? If Medina Spirit wants to go, fine. You park yourself 3-4 wide in the clear. You pull the American Pharaoh trip. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either.
And just say, if it were a speed bias track. Why give a demerit to the horse? You know, he ran, he won. You want to knock him for winning by 4.5 lengths? Whatever. His sire, Candy Rye, got 1.25 miles, won the Pacific Classic, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
So my point is, he could handle the 1.25 miles. He's won on the dirt, if it was a speed bias track or not, and the turf. So, I mean, you got to give him his kudos, you know?
I tend to agree. Now, we have a bunch more Derby questions to get to, but I did want to bring up something, Pete, while we have you, about this Breeders' Cup Derby Pick'em. Maybe we even, I don't know, Craig, if you can quickly. He's Johnny on
He's
the
on the
spot.
ball.
He's already beat me to it.
Professional.
There's the info up there, breederscup.com/Derby. But Pete, give us a little bit of the lowdown about this thing.
It's as simple as it gets. Go to breederscup.com/Derby. Pick the horse that you think is going to win the Derby. If you win, you got a shot to win $5,000. So basically, everyone who picks the winner goes into a pool, and then we'll pick someone out, and they'll win $5,000. So it's free to enter, easy to do, and just more action, you know. But jump back, it's a free roll, right? So might as well jump in, and you go to breederscup.com/Derby.
You're crazy not to. Everybody who's watching, open another window and go do that right now. Put your Derby pick in there. And let's support this fantastic promo from the Breeders' Cup. What else, Pete? What else is going on in terms of Breeders' Cup promo stuff that we should be talking about? Is there anything else that folks need to be aware of?
Not necessarily. I mean, we're going to wind up. We'll do something at Preakness and Belmont as well. You know, free to enter type tournaments, contests around those. But yeah, we're just trying to get rolling. You know, our year really begins around Belmont Stakes, right? I mean, that's when the challenge season kicks in, and then it's a straight run until Breeders' Cup. So now it's sort of we're in planning mode, and we're getting ready for the season. But believe it or not, there's a Breeders' Cup challenge race this weekend, and in Argentina, and we're gonna have a live stream from there in Spanish,
awesome,
on Saturday and Sunday. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, no, I know it's gonna be great. This gentleman named Emmanuel Aguiar, he's one of the best guys out there. This guy, he loves the game, hustles, and he'll be hosting it. But yeah, it should be interesting. And you know, listen, horses will be qualified for the Breeders' Cup, so you know, you never know where they're gonna come from. So you can keep your eye on it.
We actually had a really interesting question about that, a general racing question about the rest of this year. And if it's worth maybe in some of these Breeders' Cup Challenge races, especially, they're off at Pimlico. By the way, I apologize. We're giving the races in the contest a little bit of short shrift with all of this great Derby stuff to talk about. Matt, who did you play in here?
My contest doesn't have this race involved, so I'm just watching to see what the track looks like. It's not going to work, I don't think, for the rider on Ziggyman. I thought that was a hell of a job to get clear and get over to the rail from the outside draw.
Yeah, he has a chance to maybe hang on for a little bit of a piece here. If this rail is good, could even re-rally.
Horse in front is 20-1. Brooks Robinson.
Brooks Robinson.
Good
Come
old
on.
Brooks Robinson. You got to love that name.
Love the Nene's coming back.
Yeah. Inside looks okay. 49. So I had so much fun. We had one of our podcasts. We had Naomi Tucker, who of course everybody knows from In the Money Media and the Laurel simulcast feed, on doing a show. So I quit. And she's from the Netherlands. So I had a lot of fun, like giving her all the details of Brooks Robinson's career, so she could use that for her prattle. I was like, make sure to note that awesome play in the 1970 World Series when he grabbed it and jumped up in the air and threw out Tony Perez. I was like, the locals in Maryland are going to love it if you drop that into the broadcast. I don't know if she took advantage of it.
Love her to start sort of sprinkling in like Dutch soccer idioms, like Dennis Bergkamp or like some random players from over there. People here would have no idea what the hell she's talking about, but that's why it would be fun.
We got Belmont going here. This is in the pick 6 at this point, which I did not manage to get a ticket in for, such as the chaos of Derby week. Who did you like in this one, Matt?
I have stand by.
Race 6.
I have the 8.
Okay, the Ocho.
The gray splitting horses right now, or no, I'm sorry, just perched right there in the 2-path.
You're getting a great trip. But so I don't forget, there was a question about international runners this year coming to America, maybe having an advantage with the fact that they're more used to running off of Lasix. And it's an interesting theory. It's not impossible. But one thing I'll say is that I think a lot of times some runners and foreign shippers end up here precisely because they need Lasix. So for graded stakes types, that's not going to work. I'm monitoring the Lasix situation. I know it makes a difference. It might be a reason why we've seen slower speed figures to this point on both the Colts and Phillies sides, but I don't really have any working hypotheses about this. I'm just following it with interest to try to come up with any angles. Let's see, Matt, if you can finish your race here and maybe get your nose up. Maybe no, you're going to be second, I think, right? Dead tight, but it looked like 1-8.
I think second, but as long as the one's not any kind of a bomb, I'll take some place money.
Okay, all right. Let's see.
One was the favorite, second choice.
One was the favorite. Okay, that's fine.
I think so.
Your horse took forever to get going there. Looked like wanting to hang on the leader, and then when the one comes up outside, sort of re-engaged.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I honestly thought that the horse would finish, third or fourth. So I'll take the 9-5 shot gets you. That's fine. I'll take my 280 or whatever it is to place and move on.
Yeah, I mean,
we got from Breeders' Cup land. That's happening. My last day Breeders' Cup's May 12th, and so I'm trying to leave it in as good a position as possible. And literally, all the planning is going great. So I think everything will be perfectly fine for this year. On my way out the door, but everything's good there.
I'm trying to pretend that you're not leaving because I enjoy working with you in this capacity so much. And I'm sure you can't answer this question, but it would be a host fail not to ask. Can you give us a glimmer of what comes next for yourself? What's your official answer to that one?
A glimmer?
Give us a glimmer.
Palm trees. I'm not sure yet. So
you're retiring,
Mr. Mom.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of roses in my future.
I like it.
We'll see. No, we'll get back on the road soon. But for now, literally, I'm enjoying this moment of calm as we slow down Breeders' Cup and just enjoy the baby and hanging out at home. But Dad goes back to work this weekend. He's back on board Louisiana Downs.
Nice.
Yes. Awesome.
Working with our is that in conjunction with our LTN Global friends? Are they helping produce those shows?
Yeah,
that's
right.
awesome. And it's high quality stuff. If you're not used to the Louisiana Downs feed, folks are going to want to check this out. Not just because Pete Sr., one of the more charismatic characters in the game. I know I'll be watching.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, not to totally go off track, but Pete Sr., how do we feel about the start of the Yankee baseball season?
I'm fine. Don't bring up because listen to me. We're on a text chain. Myself, Peter, my son Lee, and a couple other people. And obviously, they're breaking my chops about the Mets. All I know is this: Francisco Lindor, $340 million. Do you know how many Grade 1 horses you could buy with that money? We got it $258 last year. They paid him $34 million a year for 10 years. No wonder why the Mets are old for 34 years and counting.
Oh my God! As a Mets fan, I just have to agree.
I know the truth hurts, though. I know.
I'm just relieved you didn't make fun of this absurd Jacob deGrom reality where we have this incredible Hall of Fame pitcher, and they outdid themselves yesterday. Usually they get 2 runs for him and lose 3-2. This was a new low with the 1-0, the literal zero.
The Yankees would have 150 wins by now. 70 and 52, or something like that. It's ridiculous. He's the greatest pitcher in baseball. And I mean, this guy's got to be seeing a psychiatrist. He must be saying,
why do they hate me? Why do they hate me?
Right.
I know. I'm sorry I brought it up, but I had.
You had to.
It's like a trigger.
I had to throw it out there. Especially with the Red Sox playing as well as they are. They were the ones that beat DeGrom last night,
right?
1-0, and it's my buddies and I were going back and forth during the game saying this is. And Pete, I mean, Fornatale, I feel bad for you as a Mets fan, but I mean, this is probably rivaling that run from Felix Hernandez in his prime with the Mariners, just completely wasted talent for 4 years. I mean, it's really remarkable how unbelievable he is and how little he has to show for it.
It's extraordinarily frustrating stuff as a Mets fan. And I just, as somebody who, tries to avoid any kind of magic thinking and just, tries to root myself in the data, I'm saying a 10-win streak is going to happen for him at some point this year. You would think so. You would think so. I mean, even the pendulum should swing back. But
after 34 years, it should.
I remember it well. I remember '86 so well. Watching, exactly where I was.
And if it weren't for Bill Buckner, you'd have won the World Series championship in a half a century.
Now you're really letting Bob Stanley and Calvin Schiraldi off the hook way too easy with that one. But Buckner he's the one who always gets criticized, but the bullpen had already blown the game at that point. Okay. I have to go, I have to defend my man Buckner. That's
all right. Well, we're going to get going.
Yes, we'll let you guys get back to your life, but thank you so much for
thanks for having us
on here, and great getting a chance to catch up. And Pete Jr. We'll look for more from you. Pete Sr. We'll see you on the Louisiana Down simulcast feed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Be good,
boys.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. So, Matt, I have a nice tie-in here. Craig, why don't we do a quick leaderboard, and then we've got some questions that came in from our we did for our In the Money Plus listeners. We said we're going to make sure to get all their questions answered, and our player who's currently in second is one of the guys who asked a question. So we'll get to that, but we'll do the let's look at our top 10 for the tour right now, starting with Kevin Irwin, Matt Miller, the aforementioned In the Money Plus subscriber. He's up there. Pete Dressens, fantastic to see that name, NHC Tour Rookie of the Year from a few years ago, who's become a friend. Loyal Sprague, David Burke, Chris Olson, who I had the chance to meet at the NHC a few years ago, sat down for a couple interviews with Steve Bick and myself. That was fun. Michael Caposio, a tournament regular. Good to see that name. We have Joe Hierchek in 8th currently. Dan Mastari in that tie for 8th. And with these ties, Matt, my brain is so tired. How many? We still have one more name, even with the ties, and that's Chris Couples, who has 2 entries, 2 of his 3 entries currently in that last tour points getting spot. A very tight and competitive leaderboard so far through the first half of this contest.
Yeah, and that's just it. We're only halfway home. So this could greatly change over the next, let's call it 35 minutes or so, maybe 40 minutes. But I was mentioning it at the top of the show. 160 entries given the week is certainly not a bad turnout. But I had mentioned to some of the folks that, maybe they were on the fence about playing. This is actually going to be so far the best opportunity to obtain points, simply because it's been the smallest field that we've had to any point, throughout the regular season so far. So I'm going to be interested to see if we finally get someone who can get into that top 10 again for the second time and really kind of continue to accumulate points as far as the regular season is concerned. And hopefully whomever ends up with, the most points in the regular season, it comes from a day like today, perhaps, where you grab maybe 10 or 20 points, and perhaps that's enough to get you over the top.
It could be a big difference maker. I'm sure you talked about the mechanism, how this contest works already, but this idea that you qualify for our playoffs with a top 2 finish, and then the top 10 get tour points, and via tour points, the top player on the tour gets a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat, and then those tour points are going to help you as a secondary way to qualify for the playoffs if you don't finish in the exacta. Let's do this Matt Miller question here. A bit of a preamble, but I'm going to read the whole thing to give the context. Every year at Derby time, I'm torn, Matt says. The horizontal bet payouts always seem to have the promise of being terrific, and so I try to spread out in pools I think are likely to lead to large value. Invariably, the years in which I hit are those with a favorites win, and I am hitting those bets for a relatively low bet unit for my bankroll rather than a high bet unit on a thin ticket. He understands he should leverage his strongest opinions. But if you were trying to make a big score on a pick 5 or pick 6 on Derby Day in a typical year, would you do so by spreading and trying to strike gold? Or would you get narrow and just pound your opinions, perhaps going a bit harder on C picks than you might otherwise? In my experience, I've done much better going narrow and picking winners. I think the biggest Derby score I ever had was like just hitting $100 straight pick 3. So that's my inclination. I think, it all depends on the sequence, but unless you like really hate the favorites, I don't think spreading is necessarily the right way to go, even though I can understand why there is that temptation. How would you answer that question, Matt?
I think you always want to emphasize your opinions, because if you have that day that you just are right, regardless of whether the fact that they're favorites or their second or third choices or their 10th choice in a 14-horse field, you want to make sure you maximize the payoff. And you don't have many opportunities to really make giant scores. I think, I don't want to say you can go wrong one way or the other, but I'm always going to be more inclined to say, play smaller tickets and really just try to hammer your opinion, because in the grand scheme of things, if you spread, and to your point, it comes in chalk, and you end up actually taking a net loss for the whole thing because you paid so much trying to spread all your, cover all your bases. I don't think that's really a recipe for success long-term, in my opinion, anyway. I think you're better off maybe playing more of those sort of wagers, but on a smaller scale and just really pressing up your opinions. And on the days that you're right, hopefully those are the ones that result in decent enough payoffs that make up for those losses and then some that you can kind of use going forward. So I lean more toward your side of things. As I've gotten older and I've played more and more, I'm really on board with the idea of, especially for a weekend like this, I'm as interested as anyone in the Derby Superfecta or the Oaks Day Derby Day Pick 6 or any of those things. But I mean, I'm finding horses in back-to-back races that I really, really like, and they're going to be prices. So rather than I'm just throwing a number out there, $100 into a pool where, maybe I don't have a great deal of coverage. And if I really wanted to get the coverage that I think I need, I'm going to need to play 2, 3, 4x that. Why not play a $50 straight double or something along those lines? And you know what? If I'm right in 2 legs, back-to-back, I mean, I'm going to be sitting on a few $1,000s coming back my way. And I can at least sit there and say, well, I got something. I didn't need to have all of it. I got the piece that I really loved, and I made hay out of it. So I just, more and more time goes by, I like to narrow things down.
Yeah, I love that point. And people don't think of it this way. They think, oh, the pick 5, the pick 4, the pick 3, that's going to be a bigger payout. But not necessarily. If you take that same spready money, find where the real strongest opinion is, the double can pay more if you have it more times. You don't always just have to bet the minimum. And if you have an opinion in a 2-horse gimmick or a 3-horse gimmick, go that way. Another bet, don't sleep on, Oaks Derby double. Don't sleep on that bet. And then I believe, once again, they're doing the Oaks Woodford Derby pick 3. We've seen that bet with 2 favorites and a logical pay huge in just the last few years. So that's another one to take a look at. The race at Gulfstream is run, I believe it came 1-5. Was it 1-5, Matt?
Yeah, it was something like that. I kind of started tuning out when I saw my horse backing up. But
okay, I was going to ask if it did anything good for you. It doesn't sound like it did, so we don't need to worry too much about that. But good on you if you had those horses. I see plenty of 1s and a few 5s up there near the top of our leaderboard, so that's gonna shake things up a little bit.
Not to interrupt, though, to your point, no. Before we completely pivot from that idea of tickets and pools to play in and things like that, I think, look, I love a low takeout bet as much as anyone, and I think we do need to continue to support those. That it's a way for the executives to recognize where, again, you support it with your dollar. But at the same time, I think you also need to be realistic about what your strengths and weaknesses are and say, you know what, I'll never forget Bob Newmeyer, who used to be a colleague over at NBC Sports, brought up the idea. The way that he explained it to me was, I want to limit the amount of variables in any race, in any bet, in anything. And the moment you add an extra leg to anything, it becomes exponentially more difficult to be successful. So what's wrong with saying, you know what, I have $200 to play with for the day. I want to have $50 to win on this horse at 6-1. I want to play a $25 double here. I want to play this, that, and the other. No, it's not the sexiest thing in the world. But if you're right on 1, 2, 3, all of them, whatever it may be, you can still have a weekend or a day that could technically be a year maker. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
100%. I mean, it's just about how many times you can have that combination and amp it up. I'm glad you mentioned Bob Newmeyer. I was emailing him the other day. We have a mutual friend in Jake Jacobs, from racingflow.com. And I love the idea of getting him on one of our In the Money Media shows at some point soon. Maybe it'll even be Horseplayers Happy Hour. We have some other questions from the Plus subscribers. I want to make sure we get to all of those to reward these folks for supporting us in that venue. If you want to learn more about what Plus is all about, inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. Lawrence asks, there's an ADW that has a money back promotion, money back if your horse runs second or third. And he asks for smaller bettors, a $10 win better. What would be the best strategy to maximize your ROI with a bet back if you run second or third promotion? And I think what Lawrence might be asking is, are we more inclined to use that money on a favorite or a long shot? And I don't really know the answer. But where my brain goes is, I don't want to use it on the horses that Peter Rotundo was talking about, where they're going to win. There's a lot of horses that because of pace scenario or just inconsistency in their PPs that they're going to run first or last. I would be very conscious not to do it on a first or last type and just try to find a horse I think has a favorable pace scenario and is it all or nothing in terms of that pace scenario. Not one of 4 speeds, for example. Try to find a horse that you're going to have the opportunity to take advantage of having those extra outs if the horse runs second or third. Where does your brain go, Matt, and how you'd approach a bet back promotion like that?
Yeah, look, I think partially it's coming sort of cutting my teeth from the contest side of things, especially the $2 win place kind of contest where you're always looking for some sort of a price that could be an overlay. I'm more geared toward what you just laid out, the idea of trying to find a horse who I think is going to hit the board, but is going to be some sort of a price. And it doesn't have to be 25-1, but it can be a horse that's going to be an overlay that perhaps kind of slips through the cracks that I think is going to outrun their odds. I do understand. And one person I don't want to speak out of turn, but someone told me when I was making my runs out to TVG that someone like Matt Carruthers is a big fan of the idea of, if you really like a 2-1 shot and you were going to bet $10 to win on them, this is effectively a way of doubling up your bet. And I agree with it 100%. I have no fault with that idea either. Long term, I don't know what the difference is from a return on investment standpoint. I just think I'm probably coming up through the contest side of things. I'm just preconditioned to be looking for the horses that I think could be 8 or 9 or 10-1 that I think can at the very least hit the board and perhaps end up, actually winning the whole thing. But really, when you think about it, even if it's an 8-1 shot that wins and you have your $10 win bet, how different is that? I understand it's effectively a 2x difference, but if I found a 2-1 shot that I really liked, maybe I bet $20 on that one. They end up hitting the board, but they don't win. I get $10 back. I only lost my $10 win bet. That's effectively the way the Carruthers had laid it out.
That's an interesting way of looking at it for sure. And Matt, extremely sharp, comes from, we had a great father-son handicapping duo on earlier in the show with Junior and Senior. Matt and his dad, Gibson Carruthers, I'd put them up against pretty much any other father-son duo along with the Rotundos. Some really sophisticated betting ideas from those two. So it doesn't surprise me that Matt was espousing that idea. Gibson Carruthers is the first person I ever heard talk about the idea of a pick six separator and that whole concept of trying to find that leg where you can really get away from what the crowd is doing and improve your payouts exponentially. Become much harder to do that in a 20-cent pick six world. But hey, we see a $2 pick six as part of the Derby Day festivities. New York going back to $1 in many instances. Maybe that separator concept becomes a little bit more relevant again. A couple more here from the In the Money Plus crew. Here's a couple of anonymous ones. In a multi-race sequence, if there's a race with an even money shot and a multitude of double-digit odds horses, why will the implied odds on the even money favorite be far worse than even money in the multi-race bets? That's a very good question. I think this is another one that I feel like these days, just my own opinion, is that a lot of times they're still pretty efficient and the pick prices pay pretty comparably to the implied win odds more often than not. But I still do think there's something to the idea that for a lot of smaller money players, everybody can see that there's a horse that's supposed to be 6-5, and there's a bunch of horses that are supposed to be 10-1, and just out of necessity almost, they will single, and therefore the implied odds in the single in that sequence sometimes will pay less than the win price will. I think it's just one of those things where it's just like the herd mentality of ticket construction. And, you're far better off in that situation if you happen to not like that favorite and you can chuck them because, by the same token, then all those 10-1s are going to pay more than that in the sequence. So that idea of trying to find horses that are going to pay more in the parlay, you want the ones that are going to pay more in the pick sequence than they are in the win end, not the other way around. It's just something you have to be conscious of. But I think in terms of the question was a why question, and I think that's what it is, just sort of a herd mentality that you'll see that a successful gambler is going to have to try to cut against. Any further thoughts on that one, Matt?
No, I think it is as simple as, for the most part, if you go through and you find, let's just say to this example, you have an even money shot or whatever it may be, and you have a number of, 8-1 plus types in the field, there's a reason that everyone has gone that way because the horse is the most likely winner on paper. It's kind of hard to argue that for the most part. Again, the public is the sharpest handicapper that there is. So if everyone is kind of seeing this, now from a win standpoint, just strictly betting the horse to win, it may not be the most appetizing wager at even money, but if you think the horse is I don't want to call it a cinch because there's no such thing, but if you think the horse is simply going to win, I think everybody kind of goes that way and says, you know what, let me try to catch something in and around. And I don't want to have to waste any of my capital on that race. If I think the horse is going to win, forget it. Set it and forget it. Go on with it and say, fine, we'll try to catch something in and around it. Now, that from my standpoint leads to a bigger topic of conversation, the idea of how much value is there really when you have a horse like that, unless you don't like them? Because if you end up looking at it saying this horse is far and away the most likely winner, let's even honestly, we can bring it to this weekend.
Gamine.
I think Gamine is going to be the horse in the 2-day pick six that she will be on. I mean, what do you think? Is 85% of the tickets out of the realm of possibility?
I mean, I think that would be correct. That's how likely to me she is to win there. Is like 80-85%. So 85% sounds about right.
So for the smaller budget players, they're going to have her. Some of the larger players, or I should say probably many of the larger players, are going to end up having her because then they're going to be spread so deep in the other races that if chaos does happen, so be it. But also, that's an instance for me where I would look at it and say, if you are a smaller to mid sort of budget player, I would almost be more inclined to just say, let's just throw her out entirely, recognizing that, we're putting in money that probabilistically speaking, we're probably going to end up losing. But if she loses and we have it and we have some sort of anything alive, it's going to pay so much more than it probably should simply because she's gone. And that's to me the most difficult thing with a wager like that this weekend. And it's not just her. There are other horses in those races throughout that pick six sequence that are going to take a giant amount of money. I think the way to make money long-term is to try to just say, pitch them. I don't want anything to do with them. If it works, great. If not, all right, well, we'll lick our wounds and come back next week.
I think from an expected value point of view, you are correct. And yet I could never do it.
I know. No, I'm with you. It's hard to convince yourself to say she's going to win, but I'm not going to use her.
I mean, there are instances where I could happily do that, just not in this specific one. What I like to think is in a bet like this, especially with a higher minimum, that we can be clever elsewhere and we can get that, to use that same term again, we can get that separation elsewhere and just treat it like a free square and look to pick up that 15 cents of equity, or whatever it would be, by just being stone cold, and understand that, you can't probably get away with her and 4 other favorites in the other 5 legs. You're gonna have to get clever somewhere.
Now, having said that, perhaps this is a little bit of a different animal because you have a race like the Kentucky Derby involved, where you've got 20 horses.
Right.
Maybe it does change the dynamic a little bit from a number standpoint.
Yeah.
But again, like if you're going to use essential quality, I don't know that you really gain much there. I wonder if it's fine if you're going to fade essential quality and rock your world, because then you've taken out the two. I would imagine they're going to be the two most heavily backed as far as the multi races are concerned. So if you pitch them and say, you know what, I think Gamine has a better chance of winning that race, and I don't want either of the two favorites who are going to take, if I had to just put a percentage on it, I mean, they're going to have, I would at least 35% as far as coverage is concerned, if not more, maybe 40%, because they're the two most likely winners. You know, if you pitch both of them, then maybe things do get a little bit more creative. But it's a tough call to make, because to your point, you know, in your right mind, you don't want to sit there and say, I'm not going to use her, because you're probably going to win by 5.
Yeah, it's hard. The math, like human impulses and technically correct decisions, like the whole art of decision making, it's really interesting. And I think if you can make yourself a computer, God bless you. You do pick up equity. I mean, I think a lot of our natural impulses in gambling are wrong. They lead you down the emotional things that we just feel. The idea of, oh, I'm doing really well, I want to wrap up, or the idea of I'm losing, so I'm going to bet a little bit more here to try to get out for the day. Like all these things that come very naturally to people are often wrong. And maybe my being so knee-jerk and selection-oriented about this is in that category. But, you know, we talk about it all the time, the idea of a gambling personality. And you've got to be, you also have to try to be true of that. And I think it all comes down to this. You don't, when a gambling situation or any situation in life where you have to make a choice is over, people don't go back and evaluate decisions objectively based on math. You evaluate a decision based on how you feel about that decision. That's how the human mind works. So you've got to take that into account. And for me, if I were to put together some massive play and left out Gamine, and then Gamine won by 5, I'd be disgusted with myself. And I wouldn't be excited that, you know, I played. Maybe somebody could be like, oh, you know what? By the math, that was the right thing. It's all good. That's not me. And I don't think it's most people probably watching. Again, I'm not saying that people playing it correctly are wrong, but there's more to the art of decision making than math.
And the big thing for me, and it's one of the bones I have to pick with some of the, I'm not naming names because there's a million people that do this.
The EV police?
Yeah, I for the life of me, I don't want to hear you say you played it incorrectly. I don't want to hear that. I played it the way I thought was correct. Now, if you want to say it's not the most efficient way of doing it, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. But at the same time, don't sit there and tell me that I'm an idiot because I played it the way that I played it. It's my money. I'll do what I want with it. Yeah. And that's the only thing that irks me about. It's not just a racing thing. It's betting in general. It's the numbers oriented side of things. I tend to skew toward the numbers oriented side of things, but I also don't think it's my place to sit there and say idiot, terrible bet. No, do with it
unsolicited opinions in gambling and in life, whether they're on the handicapping or the betting side, are not appreciated, and there is a reason, because they're obnoxious. That said, plenty of thick-skinned players. I think of Tony Joe as a brilliant example of this. He wants to learn everything. He wants to hear somebody telling him how he did it wrong and how he could do it better. But, you know, when it's appreciated and solicited, that's great. But to go out there and try to say how smart you are when you offer comparatively little in return into the social media conversation, you know, you can go kick rocks as far as I'm concerned.
If I have a friend that sits there and says, I want to cash a ticket, what should I do? And I go, I don't know. Do you want to bet Gamine $10 to show? I mean, whatever. Do what you want. If you're content cashing a ticket and collecting a few pennies on whatever you put down, doesn't make a difference to me. That's entirely up to you. I wouldn't do it, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying you shouldn't do it. Yeah. And that's the only thing. I don't like the idea of talking down to people. And even with the contest idea, if you're someone that says, I only want to bet the most likely winner in every race, guess what? Sometimes you're going to be right. Sometimes it's going to be a chalk fest. They're all going to win. And some of the folks like me or other people who take shots with these numbers, we're probably not going to have anything to our name. You might end up winning the whole thing with $50. But I'm not going to sit here and chastise you because you ended up winning on a day where it was all chalk. I'll just say it's not the day that I'm going to end up winning, but somebody had to.
No, I think it's very well put. And I would just say in general, the type of dogma that we're referring to it's just not. I just don't think it's all that helpful. I think there's ways of being a lot more constructive. That actually segues perfectly into our last question, though, Matt, from for this part of the show anyway. What do you tell your friends who ask what to do with the $100 they just deposited in their accounts for the Kentucky Derby? Many of us will get this questions from friends and family. Be as specific as possible in the answer. What would you tell a friend with $100 looking to bet the Kentucky Derby?
First, I would ask, what's your goal? What do you want to do? Do you want to have fun for the day, or are you just trying to make as much money as you can? I would never, ever, send someone who is new or doesn't know what's going on, who has $100 and say, go get into that superfecta pool in the Derby. Get at it. Because that's not going to end up working, more likely than not. It's a lottery ticket for anyone, for most of us who even have a nut in our head and know what's going on. I would say if you're looking to have a full day's worth of fun, you have $100. Take 20 at a time. Start with $20 and do a show parlay. Roll with it. Have some rooting interest every race. You don't have to be right every time, but genuinely play it as a proper parlay where everything that you got, you roll it in. You keep going, And the good news is if you start with 100 and you only throw 20 or 25 in it to the first round, you lose, you still have 20 or 25 to go. And you've got something for the entire day. I think, again, going back to what we just talked about, and you're right, it was a perfect segue. I think many of the very sharp minds that would look at it and say from a value standpoint and from getting the most bang for your buck, that's not the right way to approach things. But we're not talking about those kind of people. We're talking about the person who watches one day of racing every year. What do I want to do with it? Well, do you want to have fun? Do you want to just have some interest in the entire day? Or are you just saying, you know what, give me a horse to bet on? We can do that too. That's a different story. But if you're looking for a day's worth of fun, I think of my family and my wife's family. I mean, they don't pay attention to horse racing. I would say if you want to go to Saratoga for the day or Saturday, Derby day, put $100 in an account, play a show parlay, get a bunch of people to pitch in. You've all got a rooting interest. You have fun, have drinks, put your hat on, do whatever you want to do. I just have fun with it. It doesn't have to be, as serious as many of us make it out to be, but we make it out to be serious because it is, but for a different reason, not for that reason.
Derby day, the pools are so awash in liquidity. I'm not sure it's a terrible idea to look at a place or a show parlay, honestly. I mean, even from an expected value point of view, it's contrarian enough. You get beat up on breakage, but the pools are just so liquid, and especially the place and show pool, they're so, not sharp on the biggest days. Even Saratoga, it might be harder to make this argument, but on Derby, on Preakness, I love that idea for the going racing crowd, and I love the idea that you 5 friends, each put in 20, and if it blows, you got it. You just come back the next race.
We fire right back. Yeah, we have a great time with it, and best case scenario, you end up paying for your meals for the day. And, look, for people who don't gamble, the idea that I could sit there and say at the beginning of the day, you start with this, and at the end of the day, you paid for all your drinks and your meal, they would sign up for that.
We've had days, a lot of times it blows up, but we've had days where that paid for Luger. You run a show parlay, show parlay in the Belmont backyard through 7 races. Speaking of Belmont backyard, we should probably talk about this race for a second. Did you have a pick in race 7 at Belmont, Matt?
I did. Let's see. I am on the 3 horse in here, and I'm going to tell you why in a moment when I pull up whatever PPs I have.
I'll take this opportunity to tell Craig to pop it up there. I think it's off. Are they off of that race, Craig, at Belmont? They went in a different order.
I was going to say they've thrown things off a little bit. I had Pimlico on my TV over here. I'm bringing Belmont up.
There it is.
Yeah, okay. So I have Vintage Hollywood. This is Jose's got the mount here for Orlando Noda, and from a numbers standpoint, I didn't think the horse was that far off. Not the most likely winner. Hometown deserves that sort of, anointment, but at the same time, 3 to 5 seems rather short to me. Wouldn't be surprised at all if the 4 horse won, but I just wanted to shop around for a bit of a price that I thought was at least in the ballpark.
Yeah, you're buried down in there a little bit, it looks like, at the rail, but I'll say this, Hometown not necessarily getting the easiest time of it from here. Let's see if the horse can find, and it looks like pulling away from that runner that was on the outside now and looks to have a chance, but is being asked pretty aggressively, where the 2 Lost in Rome and the 1 Indian Counselor, to my eye, both look to be going the better. Not sure if anybody's going to reel in this Lost in Rome at 6-1. Is that you making a move down on the inside now, Matt, or is that somebody else who's coming?
No, I've tipped out in the blue cap. I don't know if the horse is going to flatten out or not. Might be able to get up for second, but I mean the 2 I think is I would imagine is home free at this point, unless something bizarre happens.
Looks gone, and then there's going to be quite a tussle for second here. A real chance that Hometown at 3-5 is not going to get that, and Hometown is not going to get there, and that could be big for the contest, because that's going to be that place price. That's going to juice this place price significantly here in this next leg at Belmont. But getting back to the $100 question. A lot depends how much of the day. I think a lot of these once a years might want a Derby only bet, or maybe Derby and Oaks only. So one idea, if they're going to be watching the Derby and the Oaks, I feel like that double would be a fun way to do it. You're not taking a knife to a gunfight betting 100 into a double pool. So that's interesting. If you're Derby only, the first thing that came to mind, a bet that I do not do on any kind of regular basis, but I think might work for the Derby. What about a laddered win place show bet? What about, where so in other words, maybe it's, I don't know how you want to do it. Maybe it's 20 to win and 40 to place and 40 to show, or something like that. Because you see in the Derby, again, those place and show pools paying so much better than they should. But the most recent example being Tis the Law, where I just felt like the world's biggest jerk that we talked about on the shows ahead of time, how he was likely to pay as much to place as to win. And what did I do? I bet it all to win, and then he paid the same as he would have to place. And I just didn't listen to my own advice. You get caught up sometimes on Derby Day, meeting nice people and chatting in the backyard of Taverna Novo, and you do some stupid stuff. But anyway, I have no problem with that type of, just keep it simple, win, place, show. Here's your horse, or a Dutch win bet with that $100 would be another way. So, I mean, those are just a few ideas. Depending, I would just quiz your friend. I love what Matt said. What's your goal? And then also, in addition to finding out what the goal is, exactly what races are they going to be watching? Because I think it totally changes what I would advise.
You brought up the idea of a Dutch win bet. What's wrong with if you have someone who comes to you and says, look, I got $100. What should I do with, I want to bet the Derby. I would go, are you opposed to getting away from the favorite, rooting against the favorite? Are you opposed to rooting against the second choice? If that's the case, why don't we find, I don't know, again, you got to Dutch it accordingly, but find 4 horses who are going to be somewhere between 10 and 30 to 1 and bet them all to win. What's wrong with that? Where you have rooting, you basically have a fifth of the field. You may not have the 5 or the 4 most likely winners of the race, but you have rooting interests. And again, we're not talking about the diehards on a day in and day out basis. We're talking about the one-off or the very rare bettor who shows up on the biggest stage. What's wrong, especially in a race like the Derby where you've got 20 horses? What's wrong with Dutching a win bet with 3 or 4 different runners?
That might be a brilliant strategy this year, frankly. I mean, brilliant maybe is overstating, but just think about it. We know that there's going to be all this extra money on Essential Quality, and we know that every year in the win pool, the long shots are never as long as they should be. Horses that should be 200 to 1 are 30 to 1 or sometimes shorter. So if you were to just zero, my idea would be to zero in on that middle of the market, and I wouldn't be surprised if you end up comparing let's just make it up and say a Rock Your World, Mandaloon, Hot Rod Charlie Dutch. It would not surprise me if relative to the fixed odds internationally on those 3 runners, you didn't get a better price doing what we're describing. And it's the perfect pool to do a Dutch in because the numbers aren't going to move on you and you're not going to get, as JK says, upside down at the last minute if something strange happens. Big finish here at Pimlico with the 6 scything through horses late to get up and get the money. Did you have a wager in there, Matt?
Yeah, I had the 5. I don't know if I got my nose down for second or not. It's going to be close between that horse and the pace setter.
Yeah, it looked very tight. Let me flip over on my screen here and see if I can catch a quick replay.
I agree with you, though. I mean, in a year like this, it's not an outrageous idea to be able to. Yeah, I think I got second. Not an outrageous idea to be able to go through and say, you know what, if there are, well, to your point, like a Hot Rod Charlie, who's probably going to go off, I would say 12-1, somewhere thereabouts. Who's to say you don't have 4 horses that are between 12 and 20-1? And no, you're not going to make $1 million on it if you're right. But if you take your 100 and you turn it into 300, what's wrong with that?
Nothing at all is wrong with that. All right, I'm going to ask another question from the stream, and then Matt, I'm going to run and go to the washroom actually, because
Sure.
I ran in here and I'm a little bit behind. But yeah, folks watching the live stream, we've got time for a couple of more before we get out of here. Or you can tell us who you think is going to win that last race. A couple of more questions. Why don't we do this one? I've been a little outspoken about this horse and my not particularly making basically saying that I'll make the evil pun and just say that I feel like a lot of this helium long shot talk is just so much hot air. But Matt Bernier, give us your thoughts on this runner.
Yeah, so helium to me, for those of you who are approaching him from a win standpoint, I think you're going to be disappointed on Saturday afternoon. I think a horse like helium is best used if you're someone who is playing a trifecta or a superfecta and using him underneath. From a numbers standpoint, strictly speaking, he's not nearly fast enough to really contend for a victory in a race like this. I'm not going to argue with anyone that looks at that Tampa Bay Derby and says, look, he was $1 million wide. It was his first start in 5 months, something along those lines. Why can't he move forward off of that? He absolutely can move forward. The problem is he needs to move forward in such a substantial way to contend for the win and have a trip work out for him and have the pace completely fall apart. There are a number of things going against a horse like helium when we're talking about a win contender. But if you're playing that trifecta, you're playing that superfecta, he is a prime contender to me, and a horse that many people are just completely glancing over because, we haven't seen him since the beginning of March or middle March, whatever that race was. He's never gone this far. He's never faced horses of this quality, X, Y, and Z. All of those pieces are correct, just objectively, but that typically third and fourth slots in wagers like the trifecta or the superfecta, especially in the Kentucky Derby, I don't want to say you throw logic out the window, but you kind of do. Because there are so many horses that can fill those slots. There are so few that can occupy the top 2, but there are many, many who can occupy the top 3 or 4. And the easiest way, I think, to sort of approach these sort of things is when you think of the horses who are going to try to win the race, whether it's from a pace standpoint, who's going to be positioned where, forwardly placed, trying to sit just off, whatever it may be. Those horses may be more likely to actually get a piece of this thing and win, as opposed to what happened.
I almost knocked I was going to put my headphones back in. I took the headphones out so I could hear you. And then I went to put the headphone back in, but I tilted the whole computer.
You almost destroyed the computer.
You got a 360-degree view of my extraordinarily messy hotel room. That's what happened there.
Good.
We're back. We're back.
But the idea is some of those more likely win contenders to me are less likely to run third or fourth because of the way they run and the company that they'll be keeping on the front end. If they end up getting tired or whatever the case may be, you could easily see them fading to 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th position, whatever it may be. Conversely, a horse like Helium, no, I don't think he's going to win the race. I don't think he's going to run second. Frankly, I don't think he's going to run third. But if you're playing that tri or that super, I think you kind of have to take a little bit of logic out of the equation and say, you know what? He ran 1 mile and 5/8 based on how wide he was. I'm not saying that he's a live shot, but underneath, why can't he get a piece of this thing? And if you're taking it from a percentage standpoint, I think even people playing in those pools don't really think he has much of a chance. So he could be that kind of horse that on the tote board, he's 40-1, but perhaps in those tries or supers, he ends up being more than that, or maybe it's less than that. Who knows? But he's still going to be 30 plus. There's no two ways around it. I just think that's the kind of horse that, no, I don't think he's got a chance to win the race. I don't think he's got a chance to run second. I don't really think he's got a great chance to finish third. He could finish fourth, in my opinion. And I still think there are too many sharp people saying no shot. There's no such thing as no shot in fourth in the Kentucky Derby.
I tend to agree here. Fan of horse sort of makes my main point about Helium, which is just on the numbers. I just don't think the horse is that fast, and it's such an unorthodox thing to come in off this kind of layoff. He wins, I lose. But at the same time, I'd talk no one off taking a shot in the Derby Superfecta. The Derby Superfecta, it's so appealing superficially with what it pays every year, and I just don't have a clear enough. For me to get involved in a bet like that, I'd have to have a much clearer idea of the pace scenario than what I have for this year. So I'm keeping it simple. I'm really looking to approach this year's Derby for me. Horizontals, maybe a little bit of backing up with key horses underneath, Mandaloon, Rock Your World underneath some other horses at big prices. But, I kind of want to keep it to 2-horse. My verticals, I definitely want to keep to the 2-horse level, even though, it's so tempting to go for that superfecta. But I just worry that this year it could be potentially a little bit of fool's gold.
You keep riffing here. I'm going to go do what you just did.
There you go. We've got. We'll ask this question. Here's a good question. We're going to need Matt for that one about his broadcasting schedule. We've got no minutes. We're going to the post here at Gulfstream. We're going to take a quick look at the leaderboard, Craig. If you've got, if you can pop it up there for the people, I can read it over here. We've got Joe Hiercheck in first right now with a nice 85.60. That's a pretty nice position. Joe has the 5 in this race. Joe Manine Jr. in second has the 9. John Kilpatrick and Dan Mastari both have the 4. John Bull the third has the 7. Amy Warren with her second entry has the 5. A name I know has gotten tour points already. PJ Priskenis is in 7th right now and has the 9 in here. Another name I'm pretty sure has gotten tour points. John Maslin has the 7. Brian O'Keefe and Gary Garnett round out the top 10. They've both got the 2 in this spot. So a bunch of live chances if you want to follow in any of our players or come up with your own thing. Pretty interesting, though, to note that you've got to go all the way down to our 14th place person right now, Ed O'Day, to find somebody who had the confidence in the heavy favorite in this spot, the number 1, to use them in this last leg. We've talked about that idea before. A lot of players believe it makes a lot of sense in a pick and pray format to go with that longer price in the last leg. The idea being, if you're behind, that's a horse that can get you caught up. And if you're ahead, that's the horse you're afraid of. You hope you go to the last with enough of a lead that you already have. Essentially, you already have the 1 here, the 6 here running for you because they're favorites, and that's not going to enable people, hopefully, to catch you. Maybe you could be in a position where you'd even have the 6 and the 5 and the 7 running for you at their odds of 5 and 7 to 1. We call that the protection of the chalk, and it's an important concept in these tournaments. Matt, you're back. We had a question for you. What is your work schedule like this weekend?
No NBC. I saw that one come through over here. No NBC for me for the Triple Crown. I'll be doing a number of things for NBC Sports Edge on the website, both written and I'm on the podcast that they have and producing some videos as well. But for the weekend, I'll probably be doing a little bit of, I'll be tweeting throughout the day on Saturday and also tomorrow, but I've still got a million deadlines for tomorrow. But yeah, just a little bit of everything. I'll be in a few different spots, but no broadcast for me for the Triple Crown. Inside joke, but producer Craig, be careful. You're going to get us sued as they're getting ready to pop here at Gulfstream Park. Very well said. Who did you come up with in here? I've got a bomb. I've got the 4-horse, who I think last check was 21 to 1, somewhere thereabouts. Let me pull up the old. And where is this contest? You're not playing in this contest. You're playing in some adjoining ones. Where does this? How many races do you have left? Quite a few, actually. Well, I say quite a few. I think there are 4 races left total. We have this race here, the 8th at Pimlico, and then the 8th and 9th at Belmont. Here I have Bodie Cody, the number 4 horse, stretching back out in distance. Admittedly, the horse is not one of the more likely winners in the race, but I like the stretch out in distance, and I think there's a situation anyway where, from a numbers standpoint, the best race this horse has, we're dealing with non-winners of 2 life. So you've got a bunch of horses who don't really like to get the job done. In that instance, especially on a turf course like Gulfstream Parks, I like to see what the rider's doing right here. Yeah. Just go and say, you know what? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. but I'd rather find out on the lead than trying to sit and try to get cute with things. So at 16-1, I'm very content taking my position from here and saying, you know what, if it works, great. If not, fine, so be it.
I love it too. I only wish the 9 didn't use similar hell bent for leather tactics. Gives your rider now has some tough decisions as you've gone from looking like you were going to have perfect position to now kind of crappy position, but these other things outside of you now too. But hopefully
it's still not bad though.
Yeah, it's actually
I was gonna say.
He kept the position going forward, which I was thinking he was going to lose. So
to be honest, in a way, the even money favorite's in a bad spot right now.
Yeah,
because if this 30-1 stops in his face, you're in trouble.
Yeah, that's a great point. The one's being ridden for luck right now, which is not what you want with an even money favorite. I mean, you got a little bit of horse, and the 9 is looking to back up. I think the rider on the 1 is maybe looking to try to get outside. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. The 1's going to need some luck. You pointed out the trouble this horse was going to get in very early. There's the split for the 1 right if the 1 is good enough. And we'll see if your 4 can finish and maybe get you.
Look at the rail.
Look
at the rail move
coming up the wood. Looks like maybe
what a ride.
Best of all, that was a great ride, and it's going to get the money too. This
what
one's
a
going
ride!
6-1, chalk. Good news for the folks in the top 10 in the contest. Yeah, what was the early part of the trip for the 6? Just held back there, super patient, made the move up the wood. Was there anything more to it?
Just waited and saw that seam. Hector Berrios, unless there was a late change, had a full head of steam. I'm watching the replay up on one of my TVs over here. Shot down to the wood and just a really impressive ride all around. Berrios is one of those riders that even during the championship meet can get, when all the big boys and girls are in town, he can still fire with the best of them and get the job done. And now that we have, so many of the riders have gone to, New York, or they've gone to Kentucky or elsewhere. This is really the time for many of those folks who are just based year round in South Florida to shine.
I think it's exactly right. I'm paying attention to the ones who are riding well. Very good thing to be able to do if you're looking to play Gulfstream day in, day out. I'm a big believer in those sometimes even short-term fluctuations of form for jockeys and trainers when you get really in tune with the circuit, which I haven't been able to do as much lately. I've been looking at so many tracks, but I haven't been able to catch that. But when you can see a ride, if you see a rider making right decisions, having a horse in the right spots, you can start to upgrade. And that was certainly I don't know. I haven't been watching enough to know if that was if that's been going on a lot with Berrios lately. But that was certainly a nice piece of work for sure. We'll get ready. We're getting ready to wrap up here, Matt. We'll do this leaderboard and we'll get out of here. Let's talk about what else folks can check out from you in terms of the podcast realm. Give us a plug for your work this week.
So you still have plenty of time to go through and listen to this week's Matt Bernier show. The bulk of it is the listener and the viewers putting in their opinions. Very similar if you're familiar with what we did for the Breeders' Cup leading into it. The exact same thing this year with the Kentucky Derby. Don't hold it against anyone who may have submitted something that, whether a horse is or isn't in the race, because we asked for it last Friday before we had a few different defections. So I just think it's a fun way to get more people involved. And at the end of the show, I give my opinions for the Derby and the Oaks as well. I'm almost looking more forward to the Kentucky Oaks than I am the Kentucky Derby. But so we have that going on. I'll be again tomorrow morning-ish on the NBC Sports Edge podcast talking about the Derby. But let's be honest, we have to be real about where we stand though, in the grand scheme of things. Tonight is the first round of the NFL draft, so there's going to be a lot of draft talk on that show.
Yeah.
So they're going to wedge me in at some point to try to talk a little bit more Derby. But yeah, a million things going on. Videos over there on NBC Sports Edge, written pieces as well, and just here, there, and everywhere. I'll be all over the place.
We got one we can answer maybe real quick. Best bet on the Oaks card tomorrow, Matt. If you're looking at that card and you could only pick one horse on it, who would you come up with?
Well, sentimentally, it's She Dares the Devil. She's not going to be a great price, though, so I wouldn't consider her a best bet. I'm going to go with – I really don't like turf sprints. Let's go with the best bet on the card tomorrow for me the number 9 in race number 9, the grade 2 8 bells. The number 9 is Lil Tootsie. For Tom Amos, Flavian Pratt turning back in distance coming out of the Fairgrounds Oaks. I think both of her one-turn races have been really, really special. She's 8-1 on the morning line. It's a good field. I think there are some quality fillies in there, and she might slip through the cracks a little bit from a number standpoint. So the number 9, Lil Tootsie, in the 9th tomorrow afternoon.
I like it. In the Edgewood, for me, Aunt Pearl's a horse you can build around. For In the Money Plus, we did some picks, grids, and I had to list like a best bet. And I went, best bet can be something you think is going to be great value, or it can be a horse you think is one to maybe build around in horizontals, just incredibly likely winner. I went the incredibly likely winner route. Were you with Aunt Pearl too, Matt, or are you going to go in a different direction in that one?
I went a different way just to try to be a little bit cute. I mean, look, if she comes back what she was, she's going to win, and not just win. She'll win by 5. I thought Giftless was interesting, the 2 for Brian Lynch. I thought her debut here in the States, it's effectively the same scenario we're seeing likely tomorrow afternoon, where there's not really any speed in the race, and she was forced to take up the chase. I thought she acquitted herself very nicely in that run at Keeneland, most recently, the Grade 2 Appalachian. I think she can move forward off that effort. And if for whatever reason Aunt Pearl doesn't come back the way we saw her, which we've seen in the past, some of these precocious 2-year-old fillies, for whatever reason, they just don't take that step forward as 3-year-olds, she's probably not totally out of it. Having said that, I don't know that you're really going to be getting an appetizing price. She might be in that 7-2, 4-1 range. I don't know that I really need that to take on Aunt Pearl in a spot like that.
She is the other one, and I do think an exacta between those two, heavily weighted towards Aunt Pearl, is not a crazy way to go at all. All right, we got to wrap this sucker up. I'm late. Our buddy Alan Studer just hit me up that I'm and he's right. I'm late for the Stewcast. Where
tell Stu he's got to wait. He's got to wait for us to finish up. All right. I was on with Stu earlier this week. Tell him he's got to wait.
I'll when I get there, I'm going to definitely say that. Let's do this leaderboard real quick, Craig, and send it home. Because I believe we have it through all of the races now, and it's up on the screen right there. Our winner today, Joe Highercheck, 85.60. Joe Manine Jr. in second, 68.80. Congratulations. You'll be in our playoffs at the end of the year. Also earning tour points today, John Kilpatrick, Daniel Mistari, John Bull III, Kenneth Torres, Amy Warren, PJ Priskenis, John Maslin, Brian O'Keefe. You see precious little movement there with the chalk finish in the finale. Also moving on to the Saturday qualifier. Now, this isn't Saturday, May 1st. This is going to be Saturday, May 8th. Probably should have said that earlier in the show. They don't do the BCBC qualifier on Derby Day because they don't have rights to show those races, and it's just simpler to wait. But also advancing to that, Gary Garnett, Ed O'Day, Pete Dressens, Loyal Sprague, Bruce Meyer, and Kevin Walsh. Final thought from you, Matt Bernier, before we make this official.
Yeah, as far as the points are concerned for the regular season with the tour this week, let's give a little love to Gary Garnett, who actually tied for 10th, but lost out via the show tiebreaker.
Oh, that is
0
tough.
shows compared to Brian O'Keefe, who had 1 show. So Brian O'Keefe is going to get a point as far as the year-long point standing is concerned. Sorry, Gary. I apologize.
Oh, that is brutal. That is absolutely brutal. Okay, that's it. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much to our guests, Peter Rotundo, Jr. and Senior. Thanks so much to producer Craig. Thanks so much to Matt Bernier. Thanks to everybody watching the live stream, those of you making comments, especially those of you who are In the Money Plus subscribers. For more on In the Money Plus, check out inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. That's going to do it. This show has been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our side, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your Kentucky Derby photos.